Today's reading is taken from John chapter 8, verses 12 to 20. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." The Pharisees challenged him. "Here you are, appearing as your own witness. Your testimony is not valid." Jesus answered, "Even if I testify on my own behalf, my testimony is valid. For I know where I came from and where I am going, but you have no idea where I come from or where I am going. You judge by human standards. I pass judgment on no one. But if I do judge, my decisions are true because I am not alone. I stand with the Father who sent me. In your own law it is written that the testimony of two witnesses is true. I am the one who testifies for myself. My other witness is the Father who sent me." Then they asked him, "Where is your Father?" "You do not know me or my Father," Jesus replied. "If you knew me, you would know my Father also." He spoke these words while teaching in the temple courts near the place where the offerings were put. Yet no one seized him because his hour had not yet come. This is the word of the Lord.
Invite Mike to come on up. Mike, as usual, we'd love to pray for you before you speak with us this morning. God, we thank you so much for Mike and for his love for you and for the time that he has spent on this passage. Or we just ask that you will speak through his life this morning, that you anoint him to share the good news that you have in store for all of us today and for this world. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ezzy. It's good to see you. While I'm trying to sort out my laptop, I've got some pictures today. That's nice. Just so for those of you who see in pictures, hopefully that'll be helpful. Just to say, while I'm trying to sort this out, hopefully it'll work. Liz and I, we're very involved with the New Wine leadership. So if you kind of like think, what's it going to be like? It's like this, but with 16,000 people and even better. It's something which we really feel very strongly about. Is that working, or is that me not doing something? It's working on my laptop. Let me just connect there. There we go, it should work now. Apple thing, yeah? That should work. Okay. Perfect, light of the world. There we go. Sometimes, you know, I go over to mainly Scandinavia to do some talks over there and everything. That's all through New Wine as well. New Wine has its tagline is local churches changing nations. Local churches changing nations. And that's what we believe that. So New Wine is run by people who work in local churches, working together because we believe that the kingdom of God works through the local churches. And so that's why we then try to get the local churches to gather together and to celebrate and to worship to God. So if you have got time, want to come along to that. We have a team of over 1,000 volunteers. So that's a cheap way of going, is you volunteer and you work. And that's a good way of doing it. So light of the world. I don't know about you, particularly as I'm getting older, I find driving at night more and more difficult. And I don't think it's just because of these new fancy bright headlights. I think it's just far easier once the sun comes up or the sun's still out to drive. It just seems to be so much easier. Also, if you're walking in the woods and it's dark, it's kind of like it can be a bit scary because you're not quite sure, is that really a solid ground or is it quite muddy or am I going to trip over something? It's far easier once the sun starts to rise and you can start to see a bit more clearly the path that is there ahead of you and to be able to walk into that. And so we can see, even in our own lives, that having light around us makes things far more easier to exist and to not trip up and to experience life in that way. And so that's external, but it's also true internally as well. Sometimes our lives can be really a tough place, and we need light to be shone into those different areas. So in our own context, we can see that light in the darkness helps. Jesus saying, "I am the light of the world," was in a totally different context. He was doing that talk during the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, the Feast of Tabernacles happens in the temple. Now, the temple has various parts to it. That small wall that you can see there, that was to stop the Gentiles get any closer to the temple. So even you may think that that's like the outside court. No, there was another court outside of that, and that's where the Gentiles could go to worship. Unless you were a Jew, you couldn't get any closer. And so that small wall there was to stop you to get there. So when we had Jesus overturning the stalls and all of that, and he's saying, "You're making this into a den of thieves," he's actually that is outside that small wall. In the area of Gentiles. And so what they were doing is they were setting up all these places to sell stuff, and that was stopping the Gentiles worshipping. That's why he was angry about it, because he's going, "You've got all your own space, and now you're even stopping the Gentiles from being able to worship me." And so then you walk in a bit in, and then that becomes like where the Jewish people could go. And a bit further in is this area, and this was like the court of women. And in our reading, I think it actually does it mention that in there as well. I'm like, well, no. So, but that's where it's happening, in that area there. And so you see those. It's not just that the women went there. That's as far as the women could go. Now, I didn't make the rules, okay? I'm just telling you how it was 2,000 years ago. I don't agree with it, but that's just how it was. So, and so the men and the women would go into that kind of area. It held around about 6,000 people. Is this my connection? Yeah. Not a lot I can do about it. So 6,000 people could fit into that area. So there'd be men and women in that area, and that's where Jesus was speaking, in that area. And a bit further in, you had the place where the Holy of Holies was in the temple. In this is the second temple that was done in this is New Testament area. So that's where the Holy of Holies would have been in there. And you see that little square section there where there's some stones. That was where the altar was. That's where they would make the sacrifices. And so you can see the women's court there, and so they could see through to see where the sacrifices were making. And so when they did all the sacrifices, particularly around a big festival, and they were slaughtering animals and burning the animals, the smell that filled the air would have been like astonishing. Sometimes you walk around Harrogate and there's barbecues going on, and you think, "Oh, that smells quite nice," you know. Just multiply that, and then imagine that it's actually getting burnt as well. That's kind of like the idea of what it might have smelled like. So anyway, Jesus is in that women's court bit, and they had, let's just quickly go back. You see those 4 big pillars? That's where they would put fire on there. And there'd be massive fires going on in those 4 big pillars. And it said that when those were alight, it illuminated not only the temple, but the whole of Jerusalem and around that area. They were just so bright. And one of the reasons that they lit those pillars was because it reminded them that as a people, as they came through the wilderness, they were led by a pillar of light. And so this was like to represent something of the pillar of light. And so the Feast of Tabernacles was all about remembering that. And it's in this context, in the Feast of Tabernacles, Jesus says, I am the light of the world. Now that's quite a claim when what they're remembering is this bright illumination, remembering that it's God that leads them. God is the one who's taking them into the promised land. And he says, I am the light of the world. And so that's why the Pharisees are going, how can you make such a claim? You're saying this in your own testimony. How can you make such a claim? That you are the light of the world. And he says, well, it's not just me, the Father who sent me as well. This is God's big plan. It's always meant to be like this. And at the end of our reading, it says, yet no one seized him because his hour had not yet come, which is a reference to the fact that actually, normally if somebody said something like that, they would have been seized and stoned because of what they were saying. I am God, and I'm going to illuminate the world, and that you should be following me. And so that's the scandal of what Jesus is saying in this particular time and message. I am the light of the world. Now, we hear that and we kind of like goes, oh, that's nice. It was scandalous in his time that he would say that, to be claiming to be the light of the world. It would have been very vivid and controversial in their time. It also echoes the beginning of John's Gospel as well, when he talks about the light has come into the world as well, a divine light that's always shone. And then later on, in the next chapter in John's Gospel, we see in verse 5, let's go back a little bit. For as long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And then he heals a blind person, showing that this is not just an external thing, but this is also an internal thing as well. That the blind person who's walking around in darkness is also healed. And so he is showing through signs and wonders what he says is true. And this is often how John's gospel works, is he makes a claim and then through signs and wonders puts a proof to it to say, look, I'm not just saying it, I'm actually working on this as well. You've got to see this for what it is. So there's a declaration and then there's a sign of wonder to show the truth of what he is saying, that God is helping him, that he, as God even, is doing this work. Darkness and blindness seem to be linked within these two passages, and the Pharisees are so blind that even this miracle can't convince them to listen to Jesus. Their hearts are hardened and they would not receive Jesus. And this was mainly because of their expectations of who the Messiah was going to be. They thought the Messiah was going to come in, sort out the Romans and free them in that way. And Jesus, as the Messiah, was not acting as they were expecting, hoping. And so they were disappointed with him. And the truth is that they tried to destroy his light. But darkness cannot destroy light. It only works one way. And so Jesus even though they try to destroy him, is able to come back through his resurrection. So how does this challenge us as we look at this? This obviously challenged the Pharisees, but how does it challenge us? I think for me personally, there are times in my life when it's been quite dark. And I can think of my dad died at 16. I saw that happen as he accidentally electrocuted himself. That was like that led to a period of darkness in my life. And it was only when I kind of like, instead of running away from it and trying to escape that, I then tried to reconcile that with God and to bring God into that situation, that there became some kind of clarity. And as I was able to own that with God and bring God into that and say, even though this has happened, you are good, that actually opened up opportunities where I was able to help other people who had gone through similar circumstances as well. Not exactly the same, but people who'd lost their parents at a young age. As a youth worker, I found that as I opened up about that, as I sorted that out myself, I was then able to help other young people who were going through similar things just by being there and helping them to see that you can come out the other side of this. We had a period of around about 6 or 7 years where we were trying to have a baby. And every month, the disappointment of that not happening was really painful. But yet, as we opened up about that, and as we shared that and was vulnerable about that, we found other people who were going through the same situation. And we were able to walk with them through that and allow God to come into that situation. When we had a child that passed away, again, it was really hard. I felt betrayed by God. I felt totally betrayed by God, truth be known. But as I was able to still say, this is really tough, but I believe, God, that you are good. As I opened myself up to that, I was able to see God come in and to be able to use that. He didn't want it to happen, but he was able to turn that bad thing into a good thing. Now, before I was working for the church, what's happened? Is that not showing at all? Let's try again. Maybe I've fallen off. So before I was working for the church, I was a photographer. And not only as a photographer, I also I was a printer as well. This isn't me. This isn't this is an AI-generated image. So, but it's the thing which I found fascinating was as I thought about this whole thing a few years ago, I suddenly realized that there are things that happen that are really negative in our lives. Now, when I was a photographer, it was such a long time ago, we had things called negatives, not SD cards or whatever. So, and what you would do is you would have a negative, and you place the negative in the enlarger, and then what do? You shine a light through the negative. And as you shine the light through the negative onto paper, it makes a positive image. So the negative still stays there, but as you allow the light to go through, it turns it into a positive image. And I just found that fascinating to me, that as I if I can let the light of the world shine through my negativity, he has the ability to turn that into something positive. And then what you would do is you get your piece of paper and you would put it into a chemical which is called a developer. And maybe some of you have done this at school. As you put the paper into the developer, you would slowly see, as you turn the paper over the right way, and you'd slowly see the image appearing in front of you. That we need to allow God to develop these things in us as well. To not rush these things. Sometimes it takes a while. And then as that develops, you can wash it, and then you put it into a fix. And then it's fixed as a positive image. And you can say, yes, Jesus has fixed this. I can see that this was an issue. But even though I still find it difficult, God has been able to turn this negative into a positive. I am the light of the world, Jesus says. I am the light of the world. And he can turn the negative things into a positive. I need to spend time sometimes to just come into his presence, into his light, to reveal the things in my life which are actually not good as well. We can be very, very good at convincing ourselves that we are good people, and we are generally good people, but there may be areas in our lives that need to just be sorted out. We were designed to be the image of God, who is perfect. So unless you are perfect, there are areas in your life where you need the light of Jesus to just come and shine in and to show you maybe an area in your life which you can work on. So there was a period in my life, particularly in my 20s, when I was really, and I think it's probably an after effect of my dad's and all of that stuff happening, I was really quite angry. And I'd lose my temper really quickly. And I had to allow Jesus to work on me, and I had to pray about that, and I had to try and find practical ways of not losing my temper so quickly and asking him to help me in that. And so we need to just spend time with God, reading our Bible, showing us what God is like so that we can become more like him, to remember that we are his image bearers, to walk in the light and to reflect his light. Watches that have a luminous paint on them work really well when a light has been shined on them. I don't know if you've ever done that. You kind of get a torch, put it on your luminous watch. I mean, the trouble is most of us now have an Apple Watch or something, don't we? So we don't worry about it. But in the old days, as when I was growing up, and at least, there was these paints on the hands and on the watch face. Put a light on it. And as you turned the lights out, it would really glow. If you didn't have the light going on that, it became less effective, less efficient. We need to come into God's presence and be into his light so that we glow. But the other truth is that the Holy Spirit comes within us as believers and dwells in us so that we can radiate his light as well. And sometimes it's through the cracks of our lives that his light shines out. Sometimes it's when we open ourselves up and are vulnerable that his light can shine out and make a difference in the world. So my challenge for myself is, how can I open myself up to receive from God, to allow him to reveal those areas in my life? How can I be able to be in such a relationship with him that I can allow him to shine through me to a world that needs it? As we look around the world, there are certainly some dark places in our world. that need the love of Jesus, that needs to know what he has done for them. Would you join me in that? Would you spend time in his presence, spending time reading the Bible, spending time praying with him, asking him to reveal the areas to work in your lives? Would you pray for those around you who are going through a tough time, that they too would know the light of Jesus in their circumstances? Would you walk in obedience with him to show a role model of how people should live, to become more image-bearing people of God as we walk with him? To help bring light into our lives and into the lives of others, so that we can together lighten the world. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." So here he's saying, I am the light of the world, but he also says, this is your role as well, kingdom people. You are the light of the world. And so to take on that challenge, we need to know his light in our lives so that we can be able to share that with those around us. Esley.